The night I turned 18, my parents gave my younger brother a brand new Jeep and handed me a paper plate with someone else's fingerprints in the frosting. The cake had my favorite flavor, but my name was not written on it. The banner in our living room said, "Congratulations, Chase," even though he had done nothing except make varsity. I had paid for the balloons, picked up the catering, cleaned the house, and skipped a college scholarship workshop because my mother said the family needed me. When I asked whether anyone remembered it was my birthday, my father laughed and said, "Adulthood means learning the world doesn't revolve around you." My mother slid a card across the counter that read, "Try being easier to celebrate." My brother opened the Jeep keys while 40 guests cheered. Then he leaned close and whispered, "Don't make that face, you always get over it." At 2 in the morning, I packed one backpack, left my phone on the kitchen table, and walked out of the house that had used me like unpaid staff for 18 years. 7 months later, the same family invited me to Thanksgiving and hid a confession beneath my dinner plate, hoping I would sign away the truth about the college money they had stolen. My name is Evelyn Moore, though everyone called me Evie until the night I stopped answering to the version of me my family had created. I grew up in Carmel, Indiana, in a stone-front house on a street where every lawn looked measured and every family photograph appeared online before dessert was served. My father, Douglas Moore, owned a successful kitchen and bath showroom that supplied remodelers across central Indiana. He sponsored high school sports, served on the church finance committee, and gave speeches about discipline at youth leadership events. My mother, Marlene, managed the image around him. She organized charity auctions, posted photographs of our family traditions, and remembered exactly which neighbors had not liked her latest Christmas portrait. My younger brother Chase was 16 when I left. He was handsome, athletic, funny when he wanted something, and so thoroughly protected from consequences that he mistook applause for personality. I was the responsible daughter. In our house, that phrase meant I was praised whenever somebody needed a sacrifice and criticized whenever I noticed the pattern. Chase forgot to feed the dog because practice ran late. I was irresponsible if I did not remind him. Chase received a C and got taken out for ice cream because he had worked hard. I received an A-, and Dad asked what happened to the missing points. Chase needed a ride, so I missed debate practice. Chase wanted new cleats, so Mom borrowed the money I had saved from babysitting. When I complained, she said, "You understand the value of family better than he does." For years, I accepted that as proof that I was mature. I did not understand that they were training me to confuse exploitation with love. My grandmother, Ruth, was the only person who treated me like a child rather than a backup adult. She lived with us after a stroke when I was 9. I helped button her sweaters, organized her medication, and sat beside her while she watched old game shows. She asked what books I liked, what college I imagined, and whether I wanted chocolate or vanilla cake without first checking what Chase preferred. When she died, I was 14. At the funeral, Dad told relatives I had been her little nurse. Everyone praised me. Nobody noticed I was standing beside the casket, trying to remember the last time an adult had asked what I needed. Grandmother Ruth left money for both grandchildren's education. That was what I had been told, anyway. Whenever I asked about my account, Dad said investments were complicated, and I should focus on earning scholarships. Chase never had to ask about his. Private pitching lessons, tournament hotels, test preparation, and eventually the down payment on his Jeep appeared as if the family budget contained a secret door that opened only for him. By 17, I worked 25 hours a week at a neighborhood bakery, took honors classes, and handled most of the household errands. Mom called me her right hand. Dad called me dependable. Chase called me when he needed rescue. On the Tuesday before my 18th birthday, Mom texted while I was attending an online college financial aid workshop at the public library. "Need you home now. Important family plans." I left early. At home, she handed me a list. Clean the guest bathroom, pick up balloons, confirm food for 40 people, and collect a cake from the bakery where I worked. I stared at the order form. It was chocolate with raspberry filling, my favorite. For one hopeful second, I believed they were planning a surprise for me and had accidentally allowed me to see too much. Then I noticed the message written in blue icing. Chase, the road is yours. I asked what we were celebrating. Mom smiled as though I were slow. Chase had made varsity, and Dad had decided to give him the used Jeep from the showroom's delivery fleet after having it completely refurbished. On my birthday? I asked. The family is already available, she said. It is efficient. I reminded her that I had planned to attend the final scholarship workshop that evening. Mom's expression cooled. Your brother only makes varsity once. You will have other opportunities to fill out forms. I should have refused. Instead, I did what I had always done. I collected balloons, arranged food, swept floors, and carried cases of soda through the garage while Chase played video games upstairs. The birthday dinner I had imagined for months vanished into his celebration before anyone had even said my name. Guests arrived at 6. Dad stood beside the Jeep wearing a dealership jacket and delivered a speech about how hard work should be rewarded. Chase had skipped 2 tutoring sessions that month and failed to complete half his chores, but the story was already polished. Mom filmed his reaction. Neighbors clapped. Church friends commented that Chase was becoming a fine young man. I remained inside slicing cake. When Aunt Serena, Mom's younger sister, asked why there were no birthday candles for me, Mom laughed and said, "Evie is 18 now. She told us she didn't want to fuss." I had said no such thing. Aunt Serena looked at me across the kitchen. I looked away because admitting the truth in front of everyone felt more humiliating than the lie. After Chase opened the keys, Mom finally called me into the living room. She handed me a small envelope and said, "We didn't forget." Inside was a $5 coffee card and a printed note. Adulthood lesson number 1: be easier to celebrate. Dad laughed. Chase's friends laughed. Even several adults smiled uncertainly because they assumed cruelty must become a joke when parents delivered it confidently. I looked toward the cake. One slice remained on a paper plate, but somebody had dragged a finger through the frosting. Mom pushed it toward me and said, "Make a wish." I laughed too. Sometimes your body protects your heart by joining the people breaking it. I washed dishes after everyone left. Dad and Mom sat in the living room discussing how grateful Chase should be. Nobody offered to help. Near midnight, I carried trash to the curb and passed the Jeep gleaming beneath the driveway lights. Through Chase's open window, I heard him speaking to friends on speakerphone. One boy said I looked ready to cry. Chase answered, "She'll get over it. Evie always gets over everything." That sentence did what years of insults had failed to do. It showed me my forgiveness had not made them love me. It had only made hurting me convenient. I went to my room and packed 2 shirts, underwear, my laptop, identification documents, grandmother Ruth's silver ring, and $63 hidden inside an old winter boot. I left my phone on the kitchen table because Dad had installed a family tracking application and controlled the account. At 1:48 a.m., I walked 3 miles to a 24-hour bus stop near the highway. Freedom did not feel brave. It felt like cold wind, sore feet, and the terror of realizing I had nowhere to sleep. I bought the cheapest ticket to Louisville because Aunt Serena lived nearby, but shame kept me from calling her. I believed leaving without a complete plan proved my parents right about me. I spent the first 2 nights in a youth shelter near downtown, sleeping with my backpack looped around my arm. The intake worker asked whether there was a safe adult she could contact. I said no, though Serena's number sat memorized in my head. I was too embarrassed to admit that a girl with good grades, a stone house, and parents praised across town had run away over a birthday party. That was how deeply my family had trained me to minimize the wound. I thought, because nobody had hit me, I had no right to leave. During the day, I applied anywhere within walking distance. A 24-hour veterinary hospital hired me as an overnight receptionist because I had experience handling bakery customers and could type quickly. The work involved answering frightened pet owners, cleaning waiting rooms, updating records, and staying calm while dogs barked and people cried. I rented a narrow room in the basement of a retired teacher named Delaney, who charged weekly, and did not ask why an 18-year-old owned only one backpack. The room smelled faintly of laundry soap. A water pipe crossed the ceiling. I slept on a used mattress and ate cereal for dinner more nights than I admitted. Yet the first paycheck made me cry in the staff bathroom because my name was printed on it. Nobody redirected it to Chase. Nobody called it family money. I opened a bank account at a different institution, created a new email address, changed passwords, and requested replacement documents. I was terrified most of the time, but terror felt cleaner than humiliation, because at least it belonged to my choices. 2 weeks after I left, a voicemail appeared on my prepaid phone from an unknown number. Mom's voice sounded broken. "Evie, please come home. We didn't know. Your father is worried sick." I listened 5 times while scanning intake forms at 3 in the morning. Part of me wanted to believe they had entered my empty room, found the years of journal entries hidden beneath my mattress, and finally understood. That hope lasted until Mom called again. I answered during my break. Her first question was, "Where are you?" Her second was, "Do you understand what this has done to our reputation?" Dad had canceled 2 community appearances because people were asking why his daughter disappeared after a family party. Chase had missed practice because classmates joked about the leftover cake. Mom said church members were gossiping. She never asked where I had slept. "You are worried about how it looks," I said. "We are worried about you," she replied quickly. "But you handled this in the most dramatic way possible." I asked why my birthday had been turned into Chase's car party. She said the timing was practical. I mentioned the card. She called it a joke. I mentioned the leftover cake. She said I had always been sensitive. Then her voice changed. "Evie, you are 18, but you are not independent. Your health insurance is through your father. College financial forms require our information. Your savings account was opened while you were a minor. Come home before you create problems you cannot solve." It was not concern, it was inventory. She was listing the chains she believed still attached me to the house. "Are you threatening me?" I asked. "I am reminding you that family takes care of family. Family does not build a cage and call it care." Mom began crying. She said Dad would forgive me for embarrassing him if I apologized. I hung up. Relatives began sending messages from unfamiliar numbers. "Your mother has not slept. Chase needs his sister. Do not throw away a good family over teenage jealousy." Not one person asked why I left. That evening, I finally called Aunt Serena. She answered on the first ring. Before I explained anything, she asked, "Are you safe?" I could not speak for several seconds because she had found the correct question immediately. The next afternoon, Serena met me at a diner near the veterinary hospital. She wore jeans, no makeup, and the expression of a woman trying not to frighten everyone by becoming furious too quickly. When she hugged me, I collapsed. She did not tell me to calm down or remind me that Mom loved me in her own way. She ordered soup, waited until I could breathe, and said, "Start wherever it hurts most." I told her everything: the chores, the money, the party, the note, Mom's threats, the years of being introduced as Chase's sister, instead of by my name. Serena listened without defending anyone. Then I showed her files from my laptop. I had saved chore charts, messages canceling my activities, and photographs where I stood in the background holding coats while Chase posed with trophies. Buried in a cloud folder labeled College were scanned account statements I did not recognize. Several withdrawals had come from a custodial education account carrying my name. The payments went to Chase's private baseball club, tutoring, school fees, and a vehicle restoration shop. Serena stared at the screen. This account came from Grandma Ruth. I felt the diner tilt around me. Mom had insisted the inheritance was too small to matter. Serena explained that Grandmother Ruth had funded separate accounts. Mine was larger because I had cared for her after the stroke. She had even written a letter, saying I deserved a future that was not built around taking care of everyone else. My parents never showed it to me. "Did they have the right to spend it?" I asked. Serena answered carefully. "They had access while you were a minor. That does not mean they were honoring what your grandmother intended. I did not need a courtroom explanation. The emotional truth was enough. I had skipped meals, worked late, and believed college might be impossible while my education money purchased Chase's applause. The Jeep from my birthday suddenly looked less like Dad's generosity and more like one more thing built from my absence. Serena connected me with a financial counselor named Tasha Green, who volunteered with young adults leaving controlling homes. Tasha helped me secure my identity, request full bank records, and gather documents. She also warned me not to confuse exposure with healing. Facts can protect you, she said. But if your only goal becomes making them hurt, they still control your direction. I understood. I did not want to destroy my family. I wanted to stop them from using their polished story to make me doubt my own memory. At the veterinary hospital, I became friends with a night technician named Lena Ortiz. She was 22, studying digital media during the day, and had a gift for noticing when people were pretending not to cry. One night, she found me organizing screenshots into dated folders. I told her the careful version. Golden brother. Hijacked birthday. Missing college fund. Lena said, "That is not one bad night. That is a system." She helped me create an anonymous social media series called The Daughter Behind the Camera. I never named my family or showed their faces. Each short video focused on a pattern: how praise can hide parentification, how a child becomes the family employee, how "you're stronger" can mean "we chose you to carry more," and how financial control keeps young adults obedient. The third video showed only my hands, placing the $5 coffee card beside a recreated slice of damaged cake. The text read, "On my 18th birthday, my brother received a Jeep. I received a note telling me to be easier to celebrate." The video spread farther than we expected. Thousands of people responded with their own stories. Oldest daughters wrote about raising siblings. Quiet sons described paying bills while golden children received praise. Adults in their 40s admitted they still felt guilty saying no to parents. Validation did not feel sweet. It felt like discovering an entire neighborhood of houses with the same hidden room. Someone from Carmel recognized the balloons in the background of a screenshot. Then another person remembered Dad's public live stream of Chase's celebration. Dad had posted it under the title, "Rewarding Hard Work." In the archived video, I appeared carrying trash bags while he joked, "Evie got an adulthood lesson tonight. Complain less, work harder, and maybe she'll catch her brother someday." More than 300 people had liked it. Several had commented that he was raising strong children. Lena archived the video before Dad deleted it. Serena then discovered something worse. The previous year, Dad had held a fundraising dinner through the church and local business association for what he called the Moore Family Education Initiative. He told donors the money would help both children attend college without debt. Serena had refused to donate because Dad would not explain how the funds were managed. 3 other relatives had written checks. A local contractor named Mr. Whitman had contributed $5,000 after Dad sent an email promising that Evelyn and Chase will benefit equally. My name was useful when attached to donations. It disappeared when the money was spent. The anonymous videos began receiving comments beneath Dad's public business posts. Did both kids receive the education fundraiser? Why is your daughter cleaning during her birthday? What does "be easier to celebrate" mean? Dad posted a statement saying a private family dispute was being manipulated online by outsiders. That word "outsiders" made me laugh. I had lived inside his house for 18 years and still had been treated like hired help. The strangers asking questions were not creating the problem, they were noticing it. Mom called 11 times in one day. Dad sent a message from a new number. "Enough. You do not understand what you are damaging." Chase sent a voice memo asking me to stop because teammates were making jokes, and his coach wanted to know whether the family fundraiser was legitimate. His voice sounded frightened rather than mocking. I replied with one sentence. "Ask Dad where my education account went." Chase did not answer for 2 days. Then he wrote, "What account?" For one moment, I felt sorry for him. It was possible he had never known where the money came from. Then I remembered every ride, every chore, every celebration where he accepted my erasure as normal. Ignorance explained part of his behavior. It did not erase the pleasure he took in being favored. In early November, Mom asked me to come home for Thanksgiving. She said Grandmother Ruth's sister, Great Aunt June, was 86 and wanted to see me. She promised there would be no fighting. Dad sent a separate message saying, "One meal, let us handle this privately like adults." Serena believed they wanted me inside the house because they could control the setting. Tasha advised me not to go unless I set boundaries. I agreed to attend for 2 hours because I loved Aunt June and wanted to retrieve several boxes still in my bedroom. My conditions were written clearly. No pressure to return home, no discussion of social media, and no documents placed in front of me. Mom replied, "Of course. We only want our daughter back at the table." Thanksgiving morning, Serena drove me to Carmel and waited nearby. The stone house looked smaller than I remembered. A wreath hung on the door. Through the front window, I could see the same dining room where Chase had opened the Jeep keys. Mom hugged me before I could step away. Dad offered a stiff handshake. Chase stood near the staircase wearing a university sweatshirt even though he had not graduated high school. He looked thinner. His confidence had become caution. Relatives filled the house. Mom had invited church friends, Mr. Whitman, Chase's coach, and 2 families connected to Dad's showroom. She claimed it was their traditional gratitude dinner. I understood immediately. This was not reconciliation. It was reputation repair with turkey. A photographer from the church newsletter was taking candid pictures near the fireplace. Mom wore the scarf I had given her the previous Christmas. On the mantel, a sign read, "Family is our greatest investment." I almost admired the lack of self-awareness. My seat was at the far end beside the kitchen door. Chase sat near Dad at the head. My name card said, "Evelyn, our responsible one." Mom smiled when she saw me reading it. "I thought you'd like that." I turned the card face down. Before dinner, she gathered everyone for a photograph. She placed Chase between our parents and waved me toward the outside edge. I declined. "Please don't make this awkward," she whispered. "I am not the person who invited donors to a private family meal." Her eyes flashed. The photographer lowered the camera. Dad announced that food was getting cold. We sat. For 20 minutes, everyone performed normality. Dad spoke about gratitude. Chase's coach praised his leadership. Mr. Whitman asked whether I had chosen a college. Dad answered for me, saying I was taking time to mature after a difficult transition. I corrected him. "I work full-time in Louisville and am enrolling in spring classes." Mom squeezed her napkin. "Great." Aunt June reached across the table and said, "Good for you." Under my plate, I felt the edge of an envelope. I lifted it. Inside was a typed statement saying I acknowledged that all education accounts had been used for shared family benefit, that no money had been taken without my understanding, and that recent online claims were based on emotional confusion after my birthday. A pen rested beside the bread plate. My 3 conditions had lasted until the first course. I placed the statement in the center of the table. Who wrote this? Dad did not look embarrassed. "It is a clarification. Sign it, and we can stop the rumors." "It is false." Mom leaned close. "Lower your voice." Mr. Whitman stopped speaking. Chase's coach glanced between us. Dad said the education funds had always been family resources and that parents made difficult choices. I asked why donor emails promised equal support. Mom accused Serena of filling my head with resentment. Then Chase said, "Wait. What donor emails?" The room shifted. Dad told him not to interrupt. I removed copies from my bag. The account statements, the fundraising email, and Grandmother Ruth's letter, which Serena had found among old estate records. I did not distribute a legal packet or make a courtroom speech. I simply placed the pages where people could read them. Mr. Whitman picked up the email bearing his name. Chase stared at the withdrawals connected to his baseball expenses. Mom's face became pale. Dad said I was humiliating the family. "No," I replied. "I am refusing to sign a lie at a dinner you designed to make everyone believe the problem is my emotions." "Great." Aunt June asked Dad why Ruth's letter had never been given to me. He said it was sentimental, not binding. It was her voice, June said. You hid it because it did not serve you. Chase read the line in Grandmother Ruth's handwriting. Evelyn has always been asked to grow up faster than she should. This money is for a future that belongs to her. His hands shook. You used this for my training? He asked. Dad said everything spent on Chase benefited the whole family because his athletic opportunities could create scholarships and connections. What did you spend on Evie? Chase asked. Nobody answered. For the first time, the golden child looked directly at the machinery that had lifted him. Mom began crying and said she had done her best to meet two children's different needs. Different needs? I asked. He needed a Jeep. I needed to become easier to celebrate? She whispered that the card was a joke. Mr. Whitman looked at Dad. Was my donation used for Evelyn? Dad answered with a long explanation about pooled family expenses. Mr. Whitman placed the paper down. That is not what you told me. Chase's coach asked whether school forms listing private family contributions were accurate. Dad's anger finally appeared. He accused everyone of interrogating him in his own home and turned on me. You wanted this. You wanted to destroy your brother because you were jealous. Chase looked at him. She didn't make you spend her account on me. The room went silent. I had imagined 100 versions of Chase defending our parents. Hearing that sentence surprised me. Dad told him to stay out of adult matters. Chase laughed bitterly. You bought me a Jeep and called me a man. Now I'm a child because I asked where the money came from. Mom reached for his hand. He moved away. Dad said I was tearing the siblings apart. No, I said. The favoritism did that. The truth is only making it visible. Mom asked what I wanted. I told her. My remaining documents, a complete accounting of the education, money, correction to the donors, and no more public statements calling me unstable. Dad said I was ungrateful. I stood. I paid for part of my brother's childhood without being told. I worked through my own birthday party. I left with $63 while you told people I was dramatic. Gratitude is not the word missing from this family. Mom blocked the doorway and whispered, If you leave, everyone will know we could not fix this. Even then, she cared about the photograph. I looked around the room at donors, relatives, church friends, and the photographer holding his camera at his side. Then tell them the truth, I said. You cannot fix what you still need me to hide. Great Aunt June rose slowly and put on her coat. Mr. Whitman followed. Chase's coach said he needed to review information with the school. Dad's carefully arranged gratitude dinner ended before dessert. I collected the boxes from my old room. On the bed, Mom had placed the same $5 coffee card from my birthday beside a note saying, Fresh start? I left both behind. Serena met me at the curb. As we drove away, Dad texted, You destroyed this family. I replied, No. I stopped doing the work that made it look whole. Then I blocked him. Consequences arrived quietly. Mr. Whitman paused new showroom orders until Dad explained the fundraiser. The church removed Dad from the finance committee while donations were reviewed. Chase's school examined whether his athletic assistance had been based on inaccurate family disclosures. I did not call employers, threaten sponsors, or post addresses. I continued my anonymous series but shifted the focus toward resources for young adults protecting documents and opening independent accounts. The truth traveled because people recognized the pattern, not because I fed them names. Mom stopped posting family photographs. Dad removed his speeches about discipline. For the first time, the Moore family existed without an audience telling them how admirable they looked. Chase returned the Jeep. Dad said it was a theatrical gesture, but Chase sold several pieces of sports equipment and placed the money into an account under my name. It was nowhere near what had been spent, and I told him that restitution did not purchase closeness. He said he understood. A month later, he called without asking me to come home. He apologized for laughing at the card, and for every time he accepted my labor as though it appeared automatically. I didn't know about the account, he said, but I knew you were treated worse. I liked what that gave me. It was the first apology from my family that did not hide behind misunderstanding. I told him trust would be built through behavior. He began by correcting friends when they called me jealous. He told his coach the birthday story was true. He found a part-time job and stopped allowing Mom to use him as a messenger. I did not suddenly become his protective older sister again. We spoke once a month. That was enough. Mom sent Grandmother Ruth's original letter in December. She included a 3-page apology explaining stress, financial pressure, and Dad's belief that Chase's sports could benefit everyone. The explanations occupied more space than the apology. I replied with one sentence. I will consider contact when you can describe what you did without telling me why I should understand it. She did not respond for 6 weeks. Then, she wrote, I chose the child whose anger frightened me least. I used your strength as permission to neglect you. That was honest. Honesty did not restore the old relationship, but it created the first possible foundation for something smaller. Dad never offered the same. He sent birthday checks and messages about forgiveness. I returned the checks and ignored the messages. Sharing DNA does not require endless access. Some relationships end not because hatred wins, but because self-respect finally arrives. I enrolled in community college and studied health information management. Years of organizing evidence had shown me I was good at protecting records and noticing what others missed. Mrs. Delaney converted the basement room into a small studio and offered a long-term lease. The veterinary hospital promoted me to records coordinator. Lena and I continued the anonymous series, adding interviews with counselors and practical guides for people leaving controlling households. We never used my parents' names. My healing did not require turning them into entertainment. On my 19th birthday, Serena, Lena, Mrs. Delaney, and several co-workers surprised me in the hospital break room. For 1 second, panic moved through me when I saw balloons. Then I noticed my name on the cake. Only my name. Nobody asked me to serve it. Nobody handed me a trash bag. They gave me a small set of keys to a used blue Honda they had helped Serena purchase from a neighbor. I cried before touching them. Serena said, "This is not a reward for being useful. It is a gift because we are glad you exist." That sentence became the birthday present I had wanted all along. I kept the damaged coffee card from my 18th birthday in a frame beside Grandmother Ruth's letter. Not because I wanted to preserve humiliation, but because the two objects told the whole distance between the life assigned to me and the life I chose. Be easier to celebrate, my parents had written. A future that belongs to her, my grandmother had answered years earlier. I no longer wanted to become easier for selfish people to love. I wanted to become impossible for them to use. Self-worth did not arrive as revenge. It arrived as a paycheck with my name, a locked bank account, a room where nobody entered without permission, a birthday cake I was not expected to cut, and the ability to hear my mother cry without immediately abandoning myself to make her stop. People still ask whether leaving in the middle of the night was reckless. It was. I was young, frightened, and fortunate to find safe people. I would tell any teenager to contact a trusted adult or shelter rather than disappear alone. But I do not regret recognizing that I had to leave. The house I escaped was not held together by love. It was held together by my unpaid labor, my stolen future, and my willingness to get over everything. The moment I stopped, everyone called me destructive because they could finally feel the weight I had been carrying. I did not burn my family down. I stepped away from the walls they had placed on my shoulders. So tell me honestly, if your parents used your 18th birthday to celebrate the golden child, spent the education money left in your name, and then invited you to Thanksgiving only to make you sign away the truth, would you give them another chance because they are family, or would you walk away and build a life where being loved no longer depends on being useful?